welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slupski, and I am here in beautiful Northridge, California for an episode that is a part Joe, part Super Friends called Injustice in the Cobra Way. And I am very happy to welcome to the Joe on Joe family a comedian, a gentleman that I met at WonderCon. He's a Joe fan. He's very funny. His name is Dave Amiott. Dave, welcome to Joe on Joe.
Well, welcome to Northridge.
Yeah.
Earthquake couldn't break us.
Right, man. This is my first time all the way up here. So you're a Joe fan. I think I saw you wearing a Cobra shirt, maybe the same one.
Yep.
And I just walk up. Whenever I'm at a con and I see people in a G.I. Joe or Cobra shirt, I just walk up, hand them my card, and go, "You look like you'd enjoy this."
Yeah, and I checked out the podcast, and I certainly did enjoy it. And that's when I contacted and said, "Hey, if you need a guest, I'm very chatty."
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So you're a stand-up comedian.
Yes, that's right.
And also actor a little bit.
I've done some acting. Yeah.
Also, Dave's fighting the fight right now. He's fighting some kind of flu bugs going around. My wife Rebecca has it.
Yeah.
So you're not alone.
And the dry air is not helping.
No, it's really not. The super windy this week that kicked up everything. I think that had something to do with it. So you're a stand-up comic. You're actually, if you're listening, and you're going to be at the Phoenix Comic Fest on May 24th. It's a Thursday. Dave's going to be performing at 6 p.m. on a stand-up panel. Tell me a little about that, Dave.
It's called Cosplay Comedy, and there's a comedian here in L.A., Kyle Kreis. He does it as a monthly show.
Shout out, Kyle.
Yeah.
What's up?
It's a monthly show in Burbank, and it's called Cosplay Comedy, and the premise is all of the comedians are cosplayers, and they're doing comedy as the character they're dressed as.
Love it.
So it's a live show every month, but then he also has done it at conventions. We just did it at Long Beach Comic Expo in February, and we just found out we're gonna do it in Phoenix.
Great.
At the end of May. It's a panel, so you have to be attending the convention, and it is Thursday night, so it's the first night of the con, but it'll be a great way to kick it off. I'll be performing as Fred from Scooby-Doo.
Now, do you do a Fred voice, or are you embodying Fred? More mannerisms, or is it impersonations? Like, walk me through this.
There's a little bit of physicality to it. Really, what it comes down to with Fred, okay, for one thing, Frank Welker is a legend.
Yes.
He's one of only two people who have ever voiced Fred Jones in the entire history of the Scooby-Doo franchise, not counting the live action.
Oh, okay, I was going to say it's Fred and what's his name, Jr.
Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yeah. Frank Welker and Freddie Prinze Jr.
Well, there was the young actor who voiced Fred on a pup named Scooby-Doo.
Oh, okay.
But he came to an unfortunate end.
They were kids. He died?
It's a sad story. Yeah.
Who was it?
I'm afraid I can't remember the man's name, but he ended up having a difficult life, and he.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Okay, well that's terrible.
But on a happy note, when I did Fred, my comedy as Fred at Long Beach, and Andrea Romano was there.
Love it.
And she saw me, and we spoke briefly, which was fun. And we agreed the whole thing about Frank Welker is Fred. It's all in how he says "gang." Come on, gang.
Yeah.
So that's usually how I start out, and that gets me into it.
So you're going to be, I'm assuming you'll have an ascot.
Yes.
Yes. And is it stand up, like, is it fresh stand up sets, or is it crowd work, or is it a panel? Like, is it an actual panel? Because you said it's like in a panel.
It's not a panel. It's a stand up show.
Stand up show. Yeah.
I don't do a lot of crowd work. Some of the other comedians have. I'm not sure who all will be performing in this because it is in Phoenix. So I'm one of the few LA comics who's going to be making the trip. I think there's probably going to be a lot of other local Phoenix comedians.
Yeah.
My friend Paul Goebel, the king of TV.
Okay.
He's going to be performing in it as Captain Kirk.
Why does he call himself the king of TV? Because I think I know who this guy is.
Did you ever watch the show Beat the Geeks on Comedy Central? He was the TV geek.
Okay.
And he had won the Nick at Night.
Does he either know everything about TV Guide or have every TV Guide or something like that?
I don't think it's affiliated with TV Guide, but he is a TV expert.
But I feel like I heard him on the radio years ago.
It's entirely about. He's a big guy. He was a TV geek on Beat the Geeks.
Okay.
TV.
Yeah, I think
expert.
I used to hear him on the Brandmeier show out of Chicago. Yeah. That sounds real familiar.
Yeah, very funny guy. And now he lives in Phoenix, so he's going to do it. And so I don't know who all will be there, but it should be a good show.
So are you a Fred Scooby-Doo expert, or like did you choose to do Fred, or did they kind of choose that for you?
Yeah, I chose to do Fred because It was a costume that I had because I've been going to conventions for a while. And in my experience, you'd see a lot of Velmas, a lot of Shaggys, several Daphnes.
Yeah.
I'd rarely see Fred.
Right.
And I thought, well, I'm just going to go as Fred. And then if I see a Scooby-Doo group that doesn't have a Fred, I'll jump in and we can get some pictures and it'll be fun. And I had that experience. And then when Kyle invited me to be on this show, part of the fun for me is trying to think of, okay, so what would Fred think is funny?
Right.
If Fred was doing stand-up, what would Fred talk about? And, there's a lot of, I'm not going to say hacky, but I'll say obvious Scooby-Doo jokes, so
Sure.
I try to stay away from those. Like, I don't have any material about Scrappy. I don't have any material about being stoned. It's...
Well, Fred wasn't the stone one.
Right.
That was Shagger.
Exactly. But I don't do, people ask me all the time if Shaggy is stoned. And like, I don't do that.
Good. How long have you been doing comedy?
Well, I used to do a lot more improv. I studied improv when I lived back in Cleveland when we had a second city there. And
Is that where you're from?
I'm originally from Cleveland.
Nice.
Yeah. And I performed with a short form improv troupe there for 2 years called Something Dada. They're still active. It's the longest running improv troupe in Cleveland.
Awesome.
Great crowd. They still perform there. If you can go to see them, great.
Shout out Something Dada.
Yeah. Then I moved from Cleveland to the San Francisco Bay Area. Did a lot of improv there. I did a lot of musical improv in the Bay. But then when I moved to LA, I focused more on stand up and writing.
Musical improv is very fun.
It is.
It is really fun. There's rules to it. It's not as it's funny once you learn those rules about like the rhyming patterns and when to what word to focus on to find the rhyme match and where to place it in the order. It takes some of the illusion away when you're watching like whose line is the guy?
Yeah, Wayne Brady.
Yeah, Wayne Brady, who's amazing.
He's brilliant.
He's so brilliant at it. And actually knowing the rules when you watch him, you go, oh, I see what he's doing, but then he'll flip it and break it and do it just at another level. And you're like, okay, that's really, really talented.
Yeah, he's very
I always
impressive.
marvel at the musical directors and their ability to just find the song within the lyric that you're saying.
Yep.
We did a few musical set sketches and stuff and worked with musical directors, and we're not songwriters or poets or anything like that, but we would just put these couplets together and rhyme them. Shout out to Jeff Bouthiet. They would hear it and they would immediately go, oh, I know what this can be. And then, there'd be some sing song, something. I don't know enough musically I would insult them if I were to describe it. But they would just hear what you're saying and see the scene and go, oh, this needs to be an up-tempo number. And then here's this, and it was just on the spot. Like, it's just so brilliant.
Yeah, if you get a good music director, you're golden.
Yeah. Shout out to Steph. You're brilliant. Yeah. I know neither of them listen, but they know they're great. Have you done any cosplay comedy as a Joe person?
I haven't.
That's the challenge.
Well, when I was at WonderCon, I was with a cosplayer friend of mine who's a woman, and she's very eccentric, and just in her day-to-day life, she has pink hair.
Awesome.
So one of the cosplays she's going to do is Zorana.
Of course.
Specifically Spy Troops Zorana, because you rarely see that one.
Okay, well, what's the different look there?
She's wearing Spy Troops Zorana wears a leather jacket, and the toy, her hair actually was pink rather than orange.
Oh,
as
right,
the previous
right.
toys have
Yeah,
been. And she's wearing like black pants and cowboy boots. Frankly, it's a little easier than a regular Zorana because there's no armor pieces.
Yeah.
And she's got these mirrored sunglasses. It's a little more bikery.
Okay.
So, but that'll be fun. And
so Toys Arena had that like vaginal shaped
mohawk. Almost,
yeah, it just was a weird choice for a hair piece on this toy. And then you saw her in the cartoon. You're like, she looks great on the cartoon.
She does.
And then the toy is just, what is going on with that hair piece? Yeah,
it's an interesting.
It's not as bad as Scarlett's just boy cut on the action figure.
Yeah.
No ponytail. Although you know that they make ponytail extensions for your Joe figure.
Really?
Yes, I saw this. If you wanted to have your original OG Scarlett have a ponytail, someone has made, and I don't think it's like made out of hair. I think it's made out of like plastic, so it would look natural. And you clip it to the back of her neck, like a little circle piece. And so it looks like she's rocking a ponytail and therefore matches what the show looks like. Brilliant idea.
Yeah. Well, I'm an action figure customizer myself.
Oh, you are?
So that kind of thing, that kind of thing really appeals to me. I don't do so much with vintage. I work more in the 25th modern era style.
Well, I don't want people to think about vintage.
Yeah.
Unless you're talking about like the 89, 90-ish vintage stuff.
Right, which is the era that we're in here with DIC.
Destroy all the DIC stuff. Just destroy it all. We're fine with that. But anything like pre-87, I don't want to see that stuff taken apart.
No.
I really don't. Yeah. It's just too beautiful to me. So what's your history with G.I. Joe?
Well, I was right in the sweet spot. 1985 hit when I started paying attention. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say most Joe fans consider that the best year.
Oh, yeah.
Am I?
No, you're absolutely right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
you're absolutely right.
Duke, Dusty, Shipwreck, Flint. I had the Ostriker,
Alpine, Bazooka, Ostriker, the Conquest X30 was like the last awesome plane in my world.
Sure.
Snowcat. You had the on the Cobra side, you had the Night Raven.
Mm-hmm. I had the transportable battle platform. That was my Joe base.
Battle platform was great.
Yeah, because I was too. I had missed out on headquarters, so I got that for Christmas. I got the battle platform for Christmas one year, and then I got the Terrordrome the next year. So I was set.
Terrordrome is the Terrordrome was the best playset of any of the playsets, except for I'm assuming the Flag and maybe the Defiant. Both were too large for me to ever dip my toe into. I'm assuming the Defiant was amazing.
I never knew anybody who had the Flag. A friend of mine had the Defiant, and I just found it unwieldy.
Oh, yeah?
I didn't think it worked as well as a base, and as far as
Didn't it have like 2 space shuttles in one?
Yeah.
Wasn't there a shuttle on top of a shuttle?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was sort of like the Night Raven where there was a drone.
Yeah.
And
I feel like a shuttle on a shuttle is overkill. A drone on a Raven is awesome.
Right.
But when you're like, we got a shuttle, and then we're putting a smaller shuttle on top of the shuttle, that seems a little bit much. Yeah. But that always seemed like a cool. And then it's funny the General, which is
maybe I'm misremembering here. I got my Ultimate Guide to
G.I.
Joe
love it.
second
I
edition
love it.
right here.
The General, which is like their mobile battle platform, takes
and that had its own version of the Locust that came with it. The Locust helicopter. Okay, so the Defiant, it had the launcher and then the shuttle. And then when they re-released just the shuttle as its own vehicle, that's when they put the Night Raven drone in it.
Oh,
so
okay.
it got an even
and and the launcher on the Defiant it has like a cockpit, right? I'm looking at that. That's a cockpit.
Yeah.
Right, which is not what a booster is for.
Right.
It's supposed to just be all fuel to get you up into the stratosphere.
Yeah, the Defiant, it was fun, but it was all over the place.
Yeah.
I was fine with the Terrordrome and the battle platform. That worked for me.
Terrordrome battle platform, the Conquest. I love the Ostriker. I love the fact that the Ostriker had shocks. Like it had a little bounce to it. It's just
if it had rubber tires, man, that would have been.
Stop it! My world would have been over. I never really owned a Mobat. I got one years later. A buddy was cleaning his stuff out, but I really wasn't even collecting Joes then, so I never really had a Mobat.
I never had a Mobat.
Never had a
Wolverine.
Mauler. I never had a Mauler.
I like the faster moving vehicles.
Yeah, I think I must have too. Yeah, I had an APC that got a lot of play.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for some reason my APC was always charging headlong into battle. The worst, the tank with a canvas side.
Yeah, I had the Ostriker and I had the Armadillo, which I loved.
Oh yeah,
I just loved the Armadillo.
Yeah, the Armadillo
and
was
the
sweet.
Snowcat. And the thing of it is, I was thinking about this recently. I always saved my flag points, and I never redeemed them.
Oh.
And now you can look at yojo.com and they have the catalog. It's like, I could have ordered a Hiss tank.
Yeah.
I could have ordered a Fang.
That's how I got my Hiss tank. I redeemed them. I did redeem my flag points. I used them to get a mail-away hooded commander, I think.
Oh,
I think I got the mail-away Duke, too. I think that's how I got my Duke. And yeah, I redeemed my flag because my mom was a coupon clipper.
Oh.
So in our house, it was always about clipping coupons.
Right.
So when I started getting into Joe's, I was like, wait, there's a coupon? It was clipping a coupon. So I was a hoarder. Well, I mean, I'm a collector anyway, so that was a big part of it. I wonder how many I had left before, like if I ever like used them all before I eventually quit. Like if I had any left over. I never found them.
Yeah, I had a little recipe card holder that I would keep all my file cards in, and that's where I'd stash my flag points. And they built up. I ordered the Fridge and I ordered Super Trooper.
Nice.
But I never, I could have had a Wolverine. I could have had a Ferret.
I never ordered the Fridge, and I'm from Chicago, and I'm a huge Bears fan. I've said on the show, I'm wearing a Bears t-shirt right now. I love the Bears. I love the 85 Bears. I think I didn't like that the Fridge was being co-opted on the Joe team. I don't know why. I never ordered the Fridge. I got my Fridge years later. I found a broken arm one at a Comic-Con, and I snagged them. And then just like 2 years ago, I used the power of the podcast to negotiate $5 off a fridge. And I kind of was like, I'll talk about you on my show.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So I finally have a complete full with the football attached to the stick
nice.
fridge in complete shape.
I actually ended up selling my football on a stick accessory not too long ago because I didn't have the figure anymore.
Oh,
so
yeah?
I was like, somebody will want this.
Sure. $5,
Yeah.
$10.
And the fridge was interesting because it was like 1987, but he had the throwback head that could only turn left to right because his neck was so thick.
Yeah. No, he was a big dude.
Yeah.
He's a big dude.
That was one of the only things I ever sent away for. I remember when I got the first issue of G.I. Joe magazine. Had the offer on the back for the original battle team, and it was like 13 older figures that you couldn't get in stores anymore. And I got permission from my mom. She said I could send away for it because you'd have to include a check.
Yeah.
She gave me permission to send away for it, but the day the magazine arrived at my house was the day the offer expired.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I think that experience must have turned me off sending away for stuff.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, I was heartbroken.
I recently started grabbing those magazines off eBay. I had them, a bunch of them when I was a kid. I don't know if I was a completist with it, but I did have a few of them, and I hadn't thought about them even during the show. I just hadn't thought about them forever. So I've recently grabbed 4 of them off. I don't know if there were that many. There were
there was only
quarterly.
like 8 or 9 issues.
Yeah,
and it's not a whole lot of Joe content.
No, it's not.
It's almost like Boy's Life.
It totally is. Like here, we're talking about the Summer Olympics, or we're talking about weightlifting or whatever. But there'd be a sweet Larry Hama written cartoon in there or comic book. Yeah.
Well, it'd be like an illustrated text story.
Not the one I read.
Oh, really?
It was a straight comic. It was like 8 pages of comic book.
Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember that one. That might have been a later issue.
Oh, I'm excited about it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about it on the most likely on my Patreon podcast, Joe on Joe Illustrated. So we just started this Patreon, and it is to support Joe on Joe and to expand the world of Joe on Joe. So we're doing Joe on Joe Illustrated. If you go to patreon.com/Joe on Joe pod, you can help support the show. Minimum $1 a month. Or if you want to hear me go wax and opine at length about individual issues of the comic book for only $3 a month, you'll get at least 4 episodes, if not 5. I'm trying to do them as many as possible. And I go through every issue of the G.I. Joe comic book page by page. Doing this, I'm applying this type of, let's go episode by episode in order and watch it all and talk about everything about it. I'm applying that to the comic books and also bringing in my personal kind of expertise in comic books. Comics are my thing. So I've got a lot of history to it. We talk about books that were being published at the time, kind of the state of the industry at the time, maybe some influences that might have happened towards the G.I. Joe book at that time. And it's great. It's a whole lot of fun. As of this recording with Dave, I think we're about 10 episodes in, and I'm loving it. I recorded an hour and a half episode about one comic book, like 122-page. I mean, we're going panel by panel. It's really cool. So I think I'm going to address those magazines on that episode. So if you want to help support Joe on Joe, keep the lights on at the Fort Wadsworth motor pool, as we like to say. I hope you guys go to Patreon and check it out. It would be fantastic. And while you're on the internet, you can find Dave on Instagram at Damiott, Damiott. And on Twitter, he's at Dave Amiott. Yeah. And you can find me at Joe and Joe Pod at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and say hi.
Yeah. And on my Instagram, I'll occasionally post pictures of my customs. And I'm not. There are people out there making custom figures that are absolute artists. My online handle for a long time was Lazy Customizer. So I make what I want for my own collection or for a buddy of mine. Because honestly, like with the Collectors Club stuff now, I can't afford $60 for Scoop.
So wow. Is that they're going right for
something
this?
like that.
Wow.
And that's direct. That's not aftermarket. So, but since so many of what they're doing now are made using recycled parts anyway, I'd rather just buy the base figures and, find a good head. And, like I made a big lob for a friend of mine.
Love it.
And anything that's been an exclusive or hard to get, I'll just make it myself. Like that's how I made a Sergeant Slaughter. I made a Footloose.
Sweet.
25th anniversary style. So if you're talking about the comics and 10 issues in, that's still mostly like the original team, right? The classic.
Oh yeah.
team?
Oh yeah. They're just about in issue 11. They introduce the first new members, Snow Job and Doc. Yeah.
Gung-ho.
In issue 10, which actually, as I'm probably going to record it as we speak. So every 5 issues, I'm actually releasing to the main Joe pod, so our listeners can hear it and see what they're missing out on. So you'll hear the episode 10 on our main feed. You'll have heard it if you're a regular listener of Joe on Joe. 10 is where the mythology kicks into high gear. They introduced Springfield a few episodes back, and the concept of Springfield and Cobra could be anywhere. But 10 is, you get hints at Snake Eye's origin. You get Dr. Venom. They're in Springfield, so it drives home that they're embedded in wherever the Springfield town is. There's all kinds of great stuff in 10. So it's, for my money, it's the start. And Larry had taken a couple issues off, so it makes me think that it was okay. You figure out what you want to do with this book. We'll get because Trimpe was credited with the story and the plot, not dialogue. They didn't. It was weird. On 8, they don't credit anyone with, or no, Trimpe gets script and plot. But usually there's a written by, like there's a weird difference with the way they credit stuff. No one was credited with the plot. Trimpe had script and art, which was a gorgeous book, and a great issue.
Oh, he's
but it was strange. Yeah, I was like, okay, well, did Larry maybe just kind of throw an idea and let him run with it? And then 9 was the Stephen Grant one, the one that Larry didn't write at all, and Stephen Grant wrote it, which was great. It was like a James Bond adventure. Then you get into 10, and then it's all Larry, and it's just 10 is just. Okay, digging into this is a deep story. It's great.
Sure. Well, when I was growing up and a fan of the toys and the cartoon, I never read the comics. I didn't start getting into the comics until I was older, and they were being republished in like omnibus editions, or you could start reading them online digitally, and that's when I started reading them. And yeah, Larry Hama, Herb Trimpe, just great stuff. So, but for me, the file cards are how I learned about the characters, and then the original Sunbow cartoon. I didn't know about the DIC cartoon until, like, I was trying to remember. It was either because I was home from school because I was sick, or maybe it was summer vacation and I was bored and I was just flipping around channels. And this must have been 1991, 92. And I discovered, there's G.I. Joe cartoons that I haven't seen. And then I watched 5 minutes. I was like, I don't need to watch this.
Yeah. I'm going on record. The DICs are winning me over because I can see this an earnestness there. They're really trying for it. But then you get but then you get this level of slapstick, and then it takes me back. But they're slowly winning me over as we go through. I'm like, okay, there's a lot better here than I thought there was. Okay. Not great, but better than I thought.
Okay. Well, I just watched the Victory at Volcania 2-parters because you did it on the podcast, and it wasn't horrible.
Right.
But you could see how much better it could have been without a whole lot of effort.
Yeah, it didn't need to be a 2-parter. If you're going to do that one as a 2-parter, you needed more like G.I. Joe plot. You needed more MacGuffins or more twists or turns. And then there were just elements that were just silly in it. Yeah. And if they treated it a little more seriously, it could have been great.
Yeah. I have thoughts about that I'll bring up on this.
Okay.
Now,
well,
but before we get into it, and I realize we're talking a long time here.
Nah, we're good.
Listeners aren't bored. Because, I talked about Frank Welker because I'm a big animation fan and voice actor fan. I showed you this DVD that I have that's autographed by several of the voice actors. I will mention, I don't think you brought this up, but on the DIC show, Ed Gilbert was still the voice of Hawk. He came over from Sunbow.
Correct, for the first season. Yeah.
That's true. Morgan Lofting stayed the voice of the Baroness.
Correct.
Chris Collins, a.k.a. Chris Latta.
Chris Latta. Chris Collins? Was that
He's sometimes credited as Chris Collins.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was on an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. He played a Klingon.
Cool.
There he was credited as Christopher Collins.
Interesting.
The voice of Destro is Maurice LaMarche.
Is it really?
Yep.
That's funny. I don't necessarily like Maurice LaMarche's Destro, but he's fantastic. That he was Brain, right? Or Pinky?
He was Brain, yeah. And then he was a bunch of voices on Futurama.
He was everything.
He was the chief on Inspector Gadget, another DIC cartoon.
Yeah, he's great. Oh, that's funny. I didn't realize that was Maurice LaMarche. That's funny.
And I had met Arthur Burgart, the original voice of Destro, at Long Beach 2 years ago. And that was a convention. I was dressed in my Dick Tracy costume.
Love it.
And so Arthur Burgart was there, Morgan Lofting was there, Hank Garrett, who was the voice of Dial Tone, he was there. And they're all older folks now. So Dick Tracy was kind of like in their wheelhouse from when they were kids. And Arthur Burgart was like happy to see me. He stood up, he said, "Young man, I got to shake your hand." So, and if you told 10-year-old me that Destro was going to be shaking my hand, I'd have lost my mind.
Probably would have scared you.
Well,
with
Destro,
or without the open shirt.
I mean, well, he's got style.
Yeah, he does.
Arthur Berger. He was wearing this leather jacket and a Kangol hat. No, not a Kangol. Like it was almost like an Indiana Jones hat, like a fedora but with a wider brim, and it was leather. He was styling. And Destro was the first toy that I ever bought with my own money. So meeting Arthur Burkhart meant a lot to me.
That's really cool. Yeah. That's really great. I love that. I love that memory. Yeah, that specific memory of like, this is when I got this, or that's when I got that, or yeah, that's what I think makes all this stuff worthwhile. Mm-hmm. Cool, man. So without any further ado, Dave Amiott, you ready to watch Injustice in the Cobra way?
Yeah, I worked in all the anecdotes I had in mind. I think now we can...
I think you did a great job. All right, man. Well, listeners, you get your DVDs ready, because here we go.
That's a pretty classic headquarters design in the opening credits.
You know, it's not terrible. It doesn't look like the G.I. Joe headquarters. It looks like something out of Cybertron.
A little. I mean, it looks like the headquarters model from the Sunbow series. It doesn't look like the toy necessarily.
Right.
Yeah.
I
find it amazing that they include the disc launcher element of the Avalanche.
We were just talking about that on one of these episodes. Like they stayed so true to the toy, but now technically when they used them, they were shooting like mines.
Oh.
But like my brain goes like, if you're firing a mine at high speeds like that, how is it not just exploding on contact?
Yeah.
But that's not what they do. Like their mines, like they fire them and then a tank would have to roll over them to explode. It's very strange.
Yeah. This would have come out at a time when I wasn't collecting the toys as much.
Yeah.
I would get some here and there.
Well, we got Injustice Cobra, written by Flint Dille and Meg McLaughlin.
Flint Dille.
Talent.
Yeah.
He's a talent. If this episode were a comedy sketch, so you come from the world of improv and everything, Captain Gridiron is the best written character on this episode. Every line of his dialogue is so on point. There are so many football euphemisms. I'm not a huge fan of that,
right?
Because it seems
it's consistent at least.
Yeah, it is so consistent in this episode and clever at times and on point. So it's like it is the writing technique or whatever that you learn when you're writing like sketch comedy. You give people points of view, and and in almost every line of dialogue, you try to work their point of view in it to remind the viewer that's what this going along. Yeah. That's it. He is so on point in this episode.
All those laser vipers, they at least got broken legs, right? Falling into that dumpster?
I hope so.
Okay. And are we assuming that the Joes were aiming at the parachutes and that's why they didn't hit any of the actual vipers?
But, so we got Heavy Duty here.
Heavy Duty is a toy I had.
You did?
I had Heavy Duty. I had the laser viper.
His machine gun looks so unwieldy in this episode.
I know
it's true to the toy.
Yes.
I get that. But in action, it's like he's just carrying a lunch tray with him.
Yeah. I had Scoop also.
Yeah. I love that they brought Scoop, and there's a lot of guys in here that they bring back.
Well, the beginning of this episode is really heavy loaded with a lot of Joes, and then they fall by the wayside.
It was this football grenade.
Are you a fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So in an early episode, the Invention Exchange with Dr. Forrester and Frank, they did tank tops.
Okay.
And they used it in the opening credits for like the first 3 seasons. It's basically what Heavy Duty is using, but it's just the turret from a tank, and you're wearing it
funny
with straps.
Yeah, that's funny. So we've got Night Creepers.
Yeah.
And
so who's in this squad? We got Scoop, Ambush, Rock and Roll, and Freefall.
Yeah, I mean,
I had to look up Freefall.
That's great. Like they're finally, a lot of these shows they've been using the same like 4 or 5 dudes, and this one they don't. They really branch out and they use a lot of different guys.
And that's the second version of Rock and Roll, and he would have been one of the older figures at this point.
Yeah, and he's got those like twin cannons on both arms.
Well, one of the reasons
I feel like they watched Predator and said, let's just do everything they do in Predator.
One of the reasons I had the Laser Viper and Heavy Duty was that at the time, characters with big accessories that practically doubled at battle stations, those appealed to me.
It's that's so funny because that's why they would do it. Like you see that they added more accessories because kids look at it and go, oh my God, all these accessories. We sold I was in the comic shop yesterday and there was a young kid I don't know, 8, 9, whatever, and he was looking for some Spider-Mans, and him and his dad, and I showed him the Spider-Man box, and out of all the good Spider-Man books, he looks over and looks interesting. Of course, the holographic foil cover, from 1993.
Yep.
It caught his eye, and he just turned around and was like, "Dad, I want this one." And the father and I had a chuckle about it because it's like, yeah, it's so funny, like that holographic captures something about a kid going, "Oh my God, this is a special issue."
Yep.
They've got extra accessories. They're special. They're bigger. Yeah.
Well, I had Stretcher because he came with his little hover pad.
Yeah. Now we've got a problem here.
Yes.
Now,
Jose Riviera.
But it's supposed to be Hector Ramirez.
Sure.
But it's not. It's Jose Riviera. Now, there's a moment later in this episode. Did you catch it? When they're looking at a newspaper?
I didn't notice it the first time. I did watch it.
Written by Hector Ramirez.
Yep.
The newspaper says Hector Ramirez.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay. That's very funny. And it makes him look like a turtle flipped on his back. Heavy Duty just tripped, and he's carrying that giant gun, which, by the way, he is just constantly pointing a weapon at his fellow soldiers.
Yep.
Which he has not unloaded.
Oh, first appearance of Serpent Man.
Oh, Did they ever do a Superman action figure?
I don't believe so.
They should.
Sure.
Someone should.
Yeah, why not?
I mean, it's silly, but someone should do a Serpent Man.
Yeah.
Because with all the customs and all the stuff in the world, I hope someone's done a Serpent Man. So he shows up like a superhero flying out of the blue.
Yeah, he takes down that Cobra Hurricane, the
Yep.
UTOL. He's got the Night Creeper there. I had noticed the Laser Vipers are pretty well suited to a Night Ops.
Yep.
Much more so than the Night Creepers.
Yeah, the Night Creepers are wearing purple.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in weird colors in this whole generation. Like, even like the green that Heavy Duty's wearing is a weird, like a neon green.
Yeah. Well, that, again, the appeal to me when I decided to buy Heavy Duty, I remember thinking, okay, he's got these cool accessories, and he's at least slightly more realistic looking.
Okay, real quick, I got my note here. I'm just going to say, Serpent Man is named after the Don't Tread on Me flag, which is currently being co-opted by the alt-right and currently being used by torchbearers. So I'm just going to say, there might be a connection there, everybody.
Well, hey, if they adopt Serpent Man as their
if all of a sudden at the next rally, at the next Make America Great Again rally, Serpent Man shows up, that's what we should do.
Yeah.
We should get a Serpent Man costume together and wear it to a MAGA rally. That would be amazing. So
you do not need to
Jose Riviera,
Mr. Riviera.
He's talking to the president. It's supposed to be Hector Ramirez, but it's not. But Hector Ramirez shows up in a newspaper. So could this be an alternate reality of G.I. Joe?
Maybe. We know that those exist.
Could the entire DIC series not be a sequel to the Sunbow, but actually be an alternate fractured universe version of G.I. Joe, which would explain so much.
Explain why Grunt is there.
Right. Exactly. So maybe some things leaked through to this reality. Like, in other words, the voice of Morgan Lofting, the voice of the Baroness, the Chris Latta, the Cobra Commander's voice. But everything else is different and worse.
Yeah.
Right? Everything else is bad in this universe.
Yeah. It's not the darkest timeline.
Right.
It's a grayer timeline.
Right. And his name's not Hector Ramirez. He didn't, because, Geraldo Rivera's name was Jerry Rivers. He changed it to Geraldo Rivera. So Hector Ramirez, following that logic, wasn't originally Hector Ramirez. It was probably like Harry Ramirez, we'll say.
Yeah.
So
Ramis. Harry Ramis.
Right.
Harold Ramis.
He's
Ramis. Harold Ramis.
It's Harold Ramis. So in this universe, he changed it to, what was it? Jose
Riviera.
Yeah, Jose Riviera. So I'm saying that might be proof that we're watching an alternate universe. We're not watching the continuation of the Sunbow. We're watching an alternate universe version of the Sunbow, saving Sunbow from having anything to do with DIC. I'm throwing it out there now, based on the Hector Ramirez, Jose Riviera.
Works for me.
Yeah.
Now we've got this woman president, President Mason.
Also an alternate reality.
Yeah. She's being abducted by Undertows, which are Destro's frogmen.
Right. And why are they named Undertows? That's a terrible name for a platoon of people.
Yeah, it sounds like
name. Right. It's a good name for one person.
This is Heavy Duty.
We're going to go to commercial and be right back. Today's file card is on the Cobra Mamba driver, code name Gyro-Viper, or as we like to say, Gyro-Viper. The coordination necessary to pilot a helicopter is akin to operating a yo-yo with your left hand while spinning a pie plate on the tip of your right index finger while you're balancing full glasses of water on top of your feet. Piloting an attack helicopter in combat is like doing all of that while riding a 12-point buck through the woods in the middle of the hunting season. Mamba pilots have to be pretty nervy just to get through the training program. Attack helicopters come in two varieties: bigger, heavily armed, slower ones, and smaller, faster ones with no armor at all. Mambas fall into the latter category. Gyro-Vipers tend to be fast, decisive thinkers with a self-assured confidence in their flying skills, and they don't look back. First thing that stands out to me about the Gyro-Viper, or Gyro-Viper, is that he actually has a helmet. He has a removable helmet, which is, I think, strange for pilots. Like, people that were packaged with vehicles, typically they were not very intricate. You know, maybe they came with a gun, but they may not have come with like their own detachable helmet, and he's got the full helmet treatment. So when you remove that, you've got a purple ski mask over his face. And I like that his color scheme actually matches the color scheme of the Mamba. The Mamba was that like two-bladed, three-canopied helicopter that Cobra had. It was purple and black, which is a little garish. But the real cool thing was that the two blades, they were at cockeyed angles, so they spun separately, and that would, I guess, keep it balanced. And the two of the three cockpits could detach from the Mamba, so the left and right ones could fire out on their own and be like their own little rocket jet thing. I really like the Mamba concept. I don't necessarily like the color scheme. Now, the figure itself, everything else kind of about him is plain. You know, it just looks like he's wearing a pilot jumpsuit, but that's okay. You know, the fact that he comes with a sweet helicopter and he's got a cool removable helmet, that's good for me. And there you go, the Mamba driver, the Gyro-Viper, or is it Gyro-Viper? We salute you. Undertow is a great name for one person. Terrible name. A great name for one person. Terrible name for a platoon of people.
Yeah. They should be like Aqua Vipers or
something, or as Iron Grenadiers, so maybe these Aqua Grenadiers or something like that, right? The Undertows is just doesn't work. Okay, why would you bother with a fake grenade though? Yeah. Why wouldn't you actually throw a grenade?
Well, because he didn't want to hurt the president.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're right. Good point.
She's been abducted
It's a very good point. This is nice. I like this. Look at the animation. His missiles are actually missing from where he shot them. They didn't just keep the animation. That's a level of detail you don't normally see on DSC, to be honest.
That's true. The Joes don't have green shirts in this. They have orange tiger stripy shirts and purple helmets.
They look crazy.
Yeah. And yet they're using these nameless Joes, even though earlier in the episode they had a lot of the other named Joes.
Yeah.
You know, why isn't
there were more Joes to use
here? Why isn't Bullhorn here?
I don't know. And what purpose would G.I. Joe ever have for making a purple helmet?
Yeah, I don't know. I was never a fan. I was never a fan of the idea of green shirts in G.I. Joe in general. I always thought the strength of G.I. Joe was in their individuality and their identities. I get it in Cobra because they're nameless, faceless legions.
Right.
I never liked the idea of there being disposable Joes. So,
yeah, well, I always looked at it as like the farm team. Like before these guys earned their whatever, their name and their code, they had to fill out the green shirts. And
in 1984, especially when you need to fill up the scene and there just aren't that many Joes.
Yeah. Well, it also, there weren't green shirt action figures, though. And the reason was there were so many Joes that they had to go with these platoons of Cobras in order to make it an even fight on the playing field.
Yeah.
I'm running into that with, when I do the file cards, I alternate Joe, Cobra. And I am much further down the road with Cobras because there's only so many Cobras.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in like 1990 Cobras. And on G.I. Joe, I'm still doing drivers from 84, 85. Like, it's just, there's this just imbalance of Joe versus Cobra. So it makes sense in the toy to have these world builders. But when you throw them on the show, it does look weird. Like, there's this, they must have made green shirt action figures, though.
In the 25th anniversary line, they did a 5-pack with Firefly and 4 green shirts.
Okay, that's cool.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think that Jose Riviera is in cahoots with Serpent Man? or is he just like seizing the opportunity?
I think he's just seizing the opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's just seizing the opportunity. Yeah, so that's the too good to be true stuff. I think he's just
There's a saw viper for no reason.
Yeah, they're just portraying him as
Cobra piranhas that don't get used.
No. You know, like a Weasley, opportunistic, kind of a weasel guy.
There's Hector.
There it is, by Hector Ramirez, really. But for argument's sake, Ramirez. So what does that do to the alternate reality theory?
Well, in his defense,
could that be something that bled through? Are you telling me they have two mustachioed Latino men on staff to report on this?
It's more diversity than you see in newspapers today.
It's true. It tells
journalism.
What it makes me think is they changed the name in the audio because maybe there was a copyright, maybe they said, hey, we can't use Ramirez because he was owned by Sunbow, maybe, or because he wasn't. He was a Sunbow creation.
Yeah.
So maybe they said, oh, we have to change it at the last minute to this guy, but it slipped through in the animation. But I like to go with the alternate reality because I'm always looking for ways to break reality with G.I. Joe.
Okay, so now at this point, President Mason has been replaced. Viewers don't know that.
No,
but she's
Why
just
is that guy wearing that hat? He's wearing a Smokey Bear hat in the front row. What?
No class.
Yeah, so
she's just appointed Serpent Man to be Secretary of Defense and Attorney General.
And the Attorney General.
Which, of course, you can only have that job if you got an extremely faulty memory.
Yeah.
So
right. Yeah, of course. I mean, okay.
And here's
this guy.
Yeah. Another original character like Jose Riviera and President Mason.
And it is, this dude could not be a more gay stereotype. It is Charles Nelson Riley. Or, not Charles Nelson Riley. I love Charles Nelson Riley, but he's the uncle on Bewitched.
Paul Lynde.
Paul Lynde. Yes. That's who this is.
You're turning G.I. Joe headquarters into a shoe boutique.
Yeah, see, that's
getting the boot.
Yeah.
This is where it gets stupid.
And isn't the color scheme
and
like you're turning the Joe headquarters into a shoe boutique.
Yeah.
And Scoop. I mean, yeah, this is the part of the show that just turns me off. Like,
now
it's supposed to be funny. I know it's whatever, gay panic humor, fine. But humor aside, it's just not funny. Like there's see all that
double reverse,
penalized unnecessarily.
Now I'll tell you,
Gridiron's on point.
You'd said that Victory at Volcania didn't need to be a two-parter.
Yeah,
I would actually think this one would work well as a two-parter.
Yes,
end part one with the Joe team being disbanded. We see what some of the other Joes go and do, and these guys are on the run.
Well, that's similar to what you're describing is one of the two-parters from Sunbow. Do you remember it? The name is escaping me right now, but yeah, I think it's the Synthoid Conspiracy. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
They replaced the leaders of. They replaced all the generals. This is just a repeat of Synthoid Conspiracy,
got it.
but done with a superhero. They replaced all the generals that made decisions. We'll be right back. Hey listeners, I'm not sure if you've heard the news, but Joe and Joe has started a Patreon, and I'm inviting you along for the ride. Go to patreon.com/JoeandJoePod and check out my page. Right now, there are 2 opportunities for you to help support the show. You can choose to be a Grunt or a Viper. Grunts get access to all the Joe and Joe episodes and early access to new episodes as they're created. Vipers get all that and access to my all-new spin-off podcast, Joe and Joe Illustrated, where I will be breaking down every single issue of the G.I. Joe comic books, page by page, in the deepest dive you'll ever hear on G.I. Joe. So go to patreon.com/JoeandJoePod and see what's happening over at the Fort Wadsworth Motor Pool. We'll see you there. And the cliffhanger was that like Mutt and Junkyard were getting attacked by someone on one of the motorcycles, maybe Rock and Roll or something. And they were like, that was the cliffhanger, like because part of the Joes were saying we need to still be Joes, and the other part were saying no, there's something wrong here. We need to rebel against the government shutting us down. That's the Synthoid Conspiracy.
Got it.
But that is what's happening here.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
And there's a guy who does reviews of these on YouTube, and he pointed out it's also basically the plot of Retaliation.
Oh, it is.
Cobra
yeah,
replaces
totally
the president with an undercover operative, and the Joes get disbanded.
Yep.
Now we're going to get into a part where, again, it's attempted comedy, and it could have been more effective if it had been done more artfully.
Uh-huh.
But, so now we're down to, from the team of 12 Joes at the beginning, now we're just following these 3.
Yeah.
And something that I noticed.
And Scoop, by the way, still useless.
Yeah, he's dumb.
And on a show where you've got both Scoop and Hector Ramirez,
Yeah.
I would have expected more interplay because Scoop is the Joe's Hector Ramirez.
Yeah.
So
there's
let's
there's a little bit of it, but it's not a lot.
Yeah, let's get some like sibling rivalry kind of a
Yeah.
thing going. Like you're doing my job, you're doing my job, or I don't know what the answer there is. But
Yeah.
there's a moment. There should be more moments of that.
You'll notice the helicopter pilot in Hector Ramirez's helicopter, same color scheme as the Joe orange shirts.
Oh,
He's got an orange shirt and a purple helmet.
they didn't want to change the character design.
To question them, they fled.
The Joes just jumped back into the same sewer they just escaped this fire-breathing dragon out of.
Yeah.
Is it they just assumed that the dragon left? Like,
I didn't think about it that much, and neither did the writers.
and here just all of a sudden they're
So where do we go?
watching TV again. It's all very quick. You're by the way, this is fantastic. Do we have a
Who the
Millard
heck was
Fillmore?
And why
There is a
Memorial?
statue of Millard Fillmore in Buffalo, New York,
Okay.
but there's not a memorial in Washington.
Okay. I love that there is in this universe. Again, another reason say this is an alternate reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm a presidential history trivia
really?
buff myself. It was something it was a school project in 5th grade. We had
I'm
to learn all about
interested
the
in
president.
liquidating the entire White House collection.
But you'll notice Scoop doesn't know who Millard Fillmore is. Somebody
Right.
has to explain it to him.
Another idiot.
Yeah.
Scoop's
And-
an idiot.
Well, and it was established he had been a Crimson Guardsman, right?
Right.
And the whole point
Right.
of the Crimson Guard is that they're professionals. They're accountants and lawyers. And, apparently Scoop was a media. And here, wait for it.
Ouch! What's a rose garden doing out here?
He doesn't know there's
He
a
doesn't
rose
know
guard.
There's a rose garden in the White House. I mean,
Yeah.
Scoop's an idiot.
Yeah. and
First of all.
I have to assume they couldn't make Heavy Duty the idiot because that would seem racist.
You're probably right.
So they had to just make.
But it is in line characterized with Scoop from like the Dragonfire stuff. He was kind of like a dope.
He was?
A little bit.
Okay.
I think he would, but not to this extent. You're totally right. He shouldn't be this dumb. But he was kind of like the outsider.
Hey, there's Zorana.
He was kind of like the outsider dope.
I don't
Yeah,
believe
okay.
it.
But
But then her mask was just back on. And
and Hector Ramirez, Jose, whatever, just busted through. Like he just has free reign of the White House.
No security, no
Yeah.
Secret Service.
Yeah.
Serpent Man and the president fled the White House?
I wish the
That's
White House
because,
was
idiot,
this
the
was
president
this
was a
easy to
fake.
break into.
So go play with your mini cam and let us do our job.
Oh,
See, that should have been Scoop saying that.
right.
Yeah.
You're totally right.
Now, okay, in that little shot we just saw, are we assuming they're in a Retaliator helicopter?
Yeah, that fits 3.
Okay, because
Which does.
this is seriously, these are the only times in this whole episode, other than the credits, where we see Joe vehicles.
Yeah,
There are no
yeah.
other Joe vehicles in
Yeah.
the whole episode,
Yeah.
and we don't even see the thing. There's a
those
range viper.
Range vipers. They use there's so many specialty vipers, and they're always used in the wrong places. They're used based on what they want to draw or what they have a character model.
And there's
for.
the Millard Fillmore.
And that Millard,
President
that
Millard Fillmore?
fantastic.
What's he doing here?
That's fantastic.
Could have been funnier.
Yeah, see, it is funny, but it should have been way funnier. So, Dave, one of the things we like to do on the show is ask our guests if you could be a member of Joe or Cobra, what would you be, and what kind of specialty would you have?
Well,
what would you do?
I've been thinking about that, and I mentioned that I cosplay as Dick Tracy sometimes.
Yep.
And that ties into this. One of my character flaws is that I am hopelessly pedantic. And so I will mention that in previous episodes, when you've talked about Chuckles,
Yeah.
you've said that he looks like someone out of Miami Vice. I would argue that he looks more like Magnum PI.
Interesting.
So,
It's a good point. No,
Cobra Commander wearing his armor.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, I know. He's got his armor underneath. Yeah.
That's a nice touch. The
Yeah,
helmet
the
shot.
shock on the Hummer, yeah. Yeah, it's a little.
So much for Serpent Man.
Yeah.
My Joe identity would be similar to like a cross between Chuckles and Law and Order. I'd be undercover G.I. Joe law enforcement, but with a Magnum PI twist. I'd come with a vehicle.
Okay.
I'd have a sports car, maybe with like some mask elements to it, with hidden rockets and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
And
Fly,
I'd have
maybe.
like a red Hawaiian shirt.
Okay.
That's what I'd wear. And then for my code name to tie into the Dick Tracy element, I'd go by Plain Clothes.
Nice. Nice. So you're an undercover guy.
Yeah. So like if Cobra's setting up a covert arms deal, I'm the guy who infiltrates it and sets it up, and I arrange the sting and everything, and then I'm there, and then the Joes show up and they take us all into custody, but then later they spring me.
That's fantastic. I love it. Plainclothes, welcome to the Joe and Joe family.
Happy to.
So the show wrapped up with the president welcoming the Joes back into service, and
Yeah.
she gave a big wholehearted yocho. I think this episode firmly cements the DSC in an alternate reality.
I'll go along with that. Yeah.
I'm on board with that.
Works.
This is a game-changing episode.
Yeah. Works for me.
Yeah. Not terrible. Some moments of like, oh, really? You got to do that? Gay panic, really? We got to do gay panic? But I think the plot is great. It's tried and true. That's Flint Dilley. I mean, there's some strong stuff. And the dialogue's great. I think your observations of they started with this massive team and had everybody just winnowed down, I think that's, I want to say it's intentional, but obviously they wrote it, so they intentionally wrote it, but it feels intentional. Because it just takes this world and brings it closer and closer and more personal. And then you get to the end and it's just those guys versus the Serpent Man,
Yeah, and I think it would have been better served if they'd chosen Joes whose specialty was better suited to the caper.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily...
Scoop should have been a great choice for this because it had to do with... I keep calling him Hector
Journalism
Ramirez.
and public perception.
Yeah, it kept having to do with him and public perception. So Scoop makes sense, but they never played on that.
Yeah.
And Gridiron, while characterization was fantastic, there's a bit of like football is the American way kind of thing that they could have had some fun with. But and then Heavy Duty is just an excuse to draw Heavy Duty. You just need to do big guns.
And I was looking at the timeline, and so this originally aired in 1990. Heavy Duty would have been, if he wasn't already on, I don't know if Heavy Duty was even available as a toy yet.
No, he wasn't. He was one of the later ones.
Yeah,
because I looked to make sure that's who we were talking about, and I was surprised that I had to go a year further in looking up on the database. Yeah, it was a year later.
Yeah, so I have to assume that was the motivation for including Heavy Duty. It's like it's going to be a new toy. We need to generate interest.
We walk around with a tabletop machine gun. Everybody, get ready for it.
And I have to assume that Gridiron was so prominent because he would have been the highest ranking Joe at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a fairly recent General Hawk figure, but Captain Gridiron, he would have been like the equivalent of Duke or Flint at the time, field commander. So it makes sense that he's so heavily involved. One other thing I wanted to mention, it's an interesting episode in terms of the original characters. Jose Riviera is so-so in terms of original, but it's progressive in as much as we have a female president.
True. Very true.
And again, there's a guy on YouTube who does reviews. I watched his version of it. He's not as funny as you think he is. But he mentioned that President Mason looks like Hillary Clinton, but she doesn't. I thought she looked more like Nancy Reagan.
Yeah,
frankly.
no, she doesn't look like Hillary Clinton. No.
Yeah. And I was forced to wonder because in the cast list, the voice actress Lisa, her name is spelled Corps,
Okay.
She's credited as the voice of Zorana. I would assume she's also the voice of President Mason, but I don't know.
Yeah, it had to be. They barely had women on the show, and when they did, it was definitely double duty. There's no way they brought a second female voice in on the show.
Yeah, so and she does
a great job.
Good job. Yeah,
President
President Mason's got gravitas.
It was great to see Zorana in the mix. I love it. This one of the tenets of Sunbow was that they always had a good mix of women. There was it was like 2 or 3 episodes maybe that was just all dudes, and that was with a smaller cast of women. It's funny looking at the figures; they stopped making women figures.
Yeah, Jinx was the last one until Ninja Force Scarlet, right?
Right, and even then, it's just another Scarlet. Like they just dropped off. It's that age old like, oh, boys don't buy girl figures, but you gotta try. You gotta give us something new.
I had Jinx.
Yeah. Oh, Jinx was great. She was awesome. She, come on, she bring the Irish Chicago into your own home. So
and to the actress's credit, when you're watching the episode, once you know what the twist is, you can see she does vary the voice between when it's actually President Mason and when it's Zorana in disguise.
It's very cool.
So, she's not phoning it in.
I love it. So thumbs up, thumbs down on this episode.
It's an interesting novelty.
Okay.
It's worth watching once. I can't believe I've watched it 3 times now.
think that's a wonderful way to sum up the DIC episode. Dave, thank you so much for being on Joe.
It was a pleasure. I love doing podcasts.
Yeah, this was a real delight. Remember, if you're in the Phoenix area, on May 24th, we're at Phoenix Comic Fest, and Dave Amiott is doing cosplay comedy at 6 p.m. as Fred Jones from Scooby-Doo. So come out and say hi to him. Any parting words to Joe and Joe listeners?
Got to get tough.
Yo, Joe.
Yo, Joe.
Yo, Joe. Well, thanks, Dave. Now you, Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.